Voiceless got a voice.
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 It's done with Voiceless got a voice. Welcome to this week's Voices Got a Voice forum, and today we are going to talk on two big issues. One, on the independence of Judiciary, and two, the appointment of Ms. Fatou to the ICC to replace Ocampo. We are going to start with the first issue, the independence of Judiciary. Have we been compromised? The President,
Well, I think it is a very controversial issue. Just like last week, we discussed it briefly.
Yeah.
And as we were coming out, just with my colleague here, between the judiciary and the executive, who should be setting up foreign policies?
Yeah.
I think it is a very tricky issue because as Kenyans we are torn between following the law and also using the usual organs about in a way of trying to define the foreign policy. At least we are starting to have a country where these organs are truly independent.
Yeah.
Because in almost South African countries, no matter these organs are not.
They're interdependent.
They're interdependent, but it's just like a test for democracy. It is an experiment that many countries learn from. How can a country maybe have an independent judiciary with a complete budget and a complete decision vis-a-vis the usual state system whereby the executive probably becomes something more superior.
Yeah.
So I think the ruling by the judiciary was very bold.
Yeah.
And it has opened up new research questions as to how such questions can be effective. Yeah.
That is his opinion. Introduce yourself, then you tell us your opinion on
My name is Now, my major problem with the ruling of the High Court is that it starts to influence foreign policy for the country. Now, in this Kenyan state, there is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, which should work in tandem if the state is going to look like it's uniform, you see. Yeah. But now this ruling seems to be influencing Kenya's foreign policy, leaving the executive to walk around struggling to maintain our relations with the countries abroad. So in my view, it's a new dilemma. It has never happened before, where a local constitution influences the foreign policy of a country.
Yeah.
Now, in the rule of separation of powers, the issue of foreign policy falls under the executive.
Yeah.
But now a ruling that was made, not out of any prejudice, is influencing the foreign policy.
Yeah.
So, and if you look keenly, Kenya is a signatory of the IGAD, is a signatory of the African Union, and these two have their own positions.
Yeah.
But then again, we're also a signatory of the ICC, which has a contrary opinion.
Yeah.
And we are in a dilemma really, because it was very bold for the Kenyan court to indict Omar al-Bashir.
Yeah.
But what do we do to the foreign policy? Because we have to forge a foreign policy.
This is the biggest question. Yeah. Introduce yourself, then tell us your opinion on this.
Asante. Kwa majina yetu Julia Sokoni. Hili swala la mahakama ama uhuru wa mahakama ni swala nyeti sana. Wakati tulipiga kura ya referendum kuchagua manapenda hii katiba mapana, tulipiga ndio kwa sababu tulikuwa tunataka uhuru wa mahakama. Na sasa hizi vile kitu ambacho Nicholas Obija alipitisha imeanza kuonyesha kwamba katiba inaanza kufanya kazi ya kwamba mahakama zetu zina uhuru. Na wakati tukisema kwamba mahakama ziwe huru, hatukumaanisha kwamba ilikuwa ni uhuru kwa sisi wa Kenya, sisi wenyewe. Ilikuwa uhuru kwa sisi wenyewe. Sio ni vile ya kwamba anasema kwamba mahakama inainterfere na masuala ya mambo ya nje. Kwa sababu sisi tukisema kwamba mahakama imesema Bashir aenda kama mtu kule nje. Ni kwamba Bashir akija hapa Kenya, executive mkamati. Mahakama imedhibitisha kwamba ikasema kwamba akikuja hapa nyumbani, kwa sababu katiba yetu ama mahakama yetu ni mambo ya hapa nyumbani. So Bashir akija hapa akamatwe kulingana na sheria za nchi.
But do you see the political goodwill of the executive in now the implementation, because it is the role of the executive to implement the constitution? Sid, what is your take on this?
I think the executive doesn't have a good given from the pronouncements that we have, and it's a recipe for chaos.
Yeah.
Because if the Katiba is clear, like my colleague have said,
Yeah.
Kenya walipiga kura so that we can have independence of the courts.
Yeah.
And we just actually proved it that yes, the courts can be independent.
Yeah.
But with the pronouncements from the executive, and we are seeing the chief justice warning the ministers that we either put up or resign.
Yeah.
Then we have a recipe of chaos, because next we don't know what next the judiciary will say. So I think even the transformation from the rule of the jungle to the rule of law must be accompanied by some kind of change of values and goodwill from the ruling class.
Yeah.
Because if yesterday I had Minister for Foreign Affairs mentioning issues like Vienna Convention.
Yeah.
But he's forgetting the ICC. So I think Mr. Kamori has raised a very critical issue.
Yeah.
We're having the GATT, we're having the Vienna Convention, we're having the ICC, which both Kenya is a signatory. I think a debate should be opened up. Which one is more superior? If we sign the ICC and also sign the GATT, and Article 2B of our law says that any treaty becomes part of our law, then it brings some point of controversy. Somebody says yes, even a GATT becomes part of our law. Somebody says ICC becomes part of our law. But again, it is wrong for maybe the minister to decide to quote one and leave others. I think it has opened a research question.
The true dilemma here, it's for instance, we have Kenyan troops in Somalia pursuing Al-Shabaab.
Yeah.
And the entry of Eritrea has complicated our issues because they can be able to fund these militias. And we have our young boys operating in Somalia, and they are being killed by landmines that might have emanated from Eritrea. Now, if we now put Sudan into the mix, and then we say, okay, because we really want to show that our courts are independent, then let's indict this Omar al-Bashir. He gets angry, and he goes now to support Al-Shabaab now in Somalia. You can see the ruling that was done by Obinja was legal, and it was in order. But then laws need wisdom. You should also look around and see now, what are the implications of my ruling? Because it is very easy for one young man from Bugela Mwananchi to go to court and say it is illegal for Kenyan troops to operate in Somalia. And the court rules that. Then we withdraw our troops from Somalia. What happens to our security implications? But you see, those are the things. True, I agree with the president of Bugela Mwananchi that it was important that we make this critical step in the separation of powers. But how we did it was the problem. Because we would have indicted a corrupt Kenyan, for example, a corrupt Kenyan minister, and we would have shown that we are independent. But now, starting with Omar al-Bashir, who is not a Kenyan, the people he has killed in Darfur are not Kenyans. You see, there is a problem there. We need first of all to start with the mess that is inside Kenya. Let's arrest a few of these corrupt people in Kenya who are walking free, and they have taken a lot of millions from Kenyans. Bashir, it's good, it's important, it's an important step because we are a signatory of the ICC. It's not, there is no contention. But then if you look at the implications of that ruling coming from High Court to the regional balance, and you know we are in an area, we are in Eastern Africa, where Somalia has collapsed. Ethiopia can collapse anytime. Sudan can start fighting Southern Sudan. You know about Abyei and the issue of the CPA. Uganda is not very stable. So we need to be very careful when we are doing international issues. Even if we really want to look independent, let's leave international issues first. Let's deal with the reason why Kenyans voted a new judiciary is because poor people wanted justice. Mr. President, poor Kenyans wanted justice. Bashir is a president of a country that we do not even share a border now.
And let me ask this: should the new constitution and the independence of judiciary mean to bring the conflict between two arms of the government, now the executive and the judiciary? Who is to resolve the issue? Because it is the work of the executive to implement, it is the work of the judiciary to interpret. Then who can interpret between the two if there is a conflict between these two?
Okay, the registration. In the rule of separation of powers, none of them should be more powerful than they are. Now, the judiciary seems to have come out powerful because it is the first one to reform. If you look inly, we have not reformed the executive, it is still the old school, and we have not reformed the legislature. So these teething problems are coming out because the judiciary is a bit ahead.
Yeah.
But if the executive was up to date,
Yeah.
and then the legislature was up to date, any conflict would have easily been resolved within the mechanisms of the registration.
Yeah.
But you know what kind of parliament we have.
Yeah.
So they most probably would come and say, let's abolish the Senate and the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
For example, already they have started saying, let's abolish the Senate.
The Senate.
So we need to work very hard to implement the Constitution wholly. Because I believe if Mr. Sidi was the Foreign Affairs Minister, he would not have had a problem with being to arrest him.
Yeah.
He understands the international law that it is local. But when you are telling some Kanu guy, a guy who has been in Kanu for 30 years, that now he is being ordered by a court, he does not understand the new constitutional dispensation. And that's why it comes to the elections must bring in people who understand the new constitution. People who really understand what it is about, what separation of powers is about.
Yeah.
But listening to Wetangula is a learned friend.
Yeah.
But he's still in the old school of thought. He should not even have commented on it because we are a signatory of the ICC. Actually, we are the first signatory of the ICC.
Sawa. That is the topic for the next week about the paradigm shift. Do we need to have a whole shift in the executive?